The American Adoption Congress 13th International Conference, April 11th to the 14th, 1991 in Garden Grove, California. This is program number D151, tape 33.
Birth parents and adoptive parents and anybody else who didn't fit those three categories.
What's left?
I don't know. Oh, tell us.
I'm an adopted grandmother.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, bravo.
And a social worker.
Terrific. Oh, that's just great. Okay. This is supposed to be a self-help group, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking. Many of you heard me yesterday, and you'll discover I'm much more comfortable in this kind of a setting than I am doing some sort of a research presentation. But let me give a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll get into what we want to talk about. This is supposed to be about the romanticized version of Reunion as seen on TV would never lead the viewer to believe that everyone lives happily ever after reunion. The lost are found, pieces are no longer missing, and searches are completed. In reality, reunions represent beginnings, not endings, and these beginnings involve travel into uncharted waters and can result in pain and estrangement or renewal, hope, growth, and healing. The purpose of this workshop is to explore ways to predict stages in the development of post-reunion relationships and to avoid the pitfalls inherent in plunging ahead unprepared. A comment there, I attended the New York conference 2 years ago, and it was because of a workshop, I believe that Carol Anderson led, that talked about how to approach your, come join the circle, how to approach your adoptee, where I learned some wonderful lessons. And I'm convinced that that helped me do it better than I would have done it otherwise. Come join us, pull over a chair. Our society does not provide models for anticipating post-reunion experiences. And post-reunion experiences, in my belief, impact all members of the multiple family systems involved. I'll use case examples from my own experience as a birth mother in the second year of a reunion with my son. Actually, I guess we're probably into our third year. And from experiences of my two daughters, my husband, my mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, my niece, my nephew, my aunts and uncle, beyond having to offer support or lack of support to me as I struggled in terms of a new relationship with my son, each person touched by the reunion has had to deal with his own relationship to this new family member. Family systems must change as new relationships develop. The histories of families united and reunited wait to be written. These histories need ultimately to be woven into the daily fabric of each person's life and into the overall fabric of society. Only then will all members of the multi-generational family systems touched by adoption become visible and sharing partners in the post-reunion experience. And this is really the kinship network that was talked about during the first session. I'm a family therapist, at least I used to be, and my background is strongly rooted in multi-generational family systems. When I do genograms or family maps, I even include dogs and cats. And when I teach literature, I map the family involved. The family map of birth mothers has no place for surrendered children. And the books that teach therapists how to do genograms and family maps do not demonstrate anywhere where you would put a surrendered child. I had to create one. And how I did that is really unimportant right now. Who is a mother and not a mother at the same time? Obviously a birth mother. And I'm a birth mother who was reunited. I surrendered my son when I was 25 years old, 1 year after graduating from Cornell with a Bachelor of Science in nursing degree. No one in my family knew of the pregnancy, or so I thought. My unborn child and I were alone together, isolated from the world I had known previous to the pregnancy. We lived the lies I fabricated. I purchased the wedding band I wore. I've given that to my son post-reunion. I lived at the hospital where I worked until the day I went into labor. I paid my own room, board, and medical bills. I cared for my son during my stay in the hospital, having bonded deeply with him before, during, and after his birth. I had read about the importance of bonding and attachment, so I requested that the adoption agency place him in an adoptive home on the day we were discharged from the hospital. Agency policy would have required that he be hospitalized for a period of time for testing. At my insistence, they agreed to waive the policy in this case. I wanted his adoptive parents to feel secure and entitled. I wanted their attachment to be immediate and strong. I also insisted that all papers, even those normally signed at a later date, be signed on that day. I was completely convinced that a child needed two parents, that if I loved my child, I should put his needs ahead of my own, and that his carefully selected adoptive parents would parent him better than I could. I've learned a lot since then. Upon our discharge from the hospital, a social worker drove my son and me to the agency. She was upset because we were late. I had dressed my baby in an outfit given to him by my roommates and saved for that occasion. I had knitted him a green blanket. That blanket became, in my fantasy, the proof that he would bring when we found each other someday. The social worker grabbed him away when we arrived at the agency. She said they had to change his clothes and that the priest was waiting to baptize him. I was not ready to give him to her. I didn't want his clothes changed. I did not realize that he was already irrevocably lost to me. I had become invisible and an anonymous nuisance. I have always wished I had been given time to say goodbye. That afternoon, I rented a car, moved to another apartment. I went on with my life, or so it would seem. I was a good girl. I had done what society expected of me. 25 years post-surrender, a husband and two daughters later, approximately 2 years ago, I was reunited with my son, thanks to the AAC, I must say. Birth mothers do not go on with their lives as if nothing happened. Birth mothers do not forget their surrendered children. The loss is not resolved by reunion alone. In fact, the reunion itself makes the loss more real. Secrecy surrounds all aspects of adoption. This secrecy is maintained by legally and sealed and altered records. Also, I grew up in a family where secrecy was part of our family story. I had a grandfather. There was a secret about my grandfather. He didn't exist anymore. And I was told he had been killed in a traffic accident. A horse ran him over or something. And I never believed that. I spent much of my life trying to find out about my grandfather, and actually before I searched for my son, I searched for my grandfather. I was told he died in the 20s, and there was no death certificate at all for his death. So the whole family conspired to keep my mother's secret, and that was the family that I had lived in.
What's the secret?
Oh, okay. A few years ago, my father died and my mother remarried, and I was very angry at that time. Just before she remarried, I asked her point blank, after we had tried many times to get her drunk and get her to talk about it, and it never worked. I figured that my fantasies had to be much worse than the reality. The reality was that he was an alcoholic. He had left the family when my mother was 13. She had become the parentified parent. My grandmother woke up with nightmares for all the time when I was really young, and I would have to go down and tell her to turn over. And he had lived down the street from my aunt and uncle. My mother went to see him when he was dying in 1942, and that was the only time that she saw him. My aunt never did see him. And there may be other children out there. I haven't had time, quite frankly, to pursue that. Someday I will. It's hard to believe that the woman who lives next door could be a birth mother. I was the woman next door. I could have been your friend or colleague or cousin or nurse or professor. The scarlet letter of my past pregnancy was invisible in the eyes of the world because birth mothers are made invisible by society. Normal support systems do not operate to facilitate their grief work. I parented my daughters in an over-involved, fearful way. I always had known where they were. I always had to know where they were. I returned to work to give them breathing room to grow. Deep within my being was the feeling that what I had done was wrong and I would be punished. God would take my children from me in retribution for my sin. Surely it is a sin to conceive a child out of wedlock. It must be an even greater sin to surrender that child. At 18, my older daughter asked me if I had lost a child. Somehow she had sensed it, partly because I worried too much, and I was always saying that I would stand behind her no matter what. Constantly, as she says, harassing her about not getting pregnant. I had a terrible fear that my daughters would follow in my footsteps somehow. I was shocked that she had figured out that I thought what I had thought no one knew. She supported me during my search, spending many hours in the library with me going through birth records. My younger daughter never guessed, but she had dreamed several times about having a brother. She always dismissed these dreams as impossible. Once my son was found, we told her about her half-brother. I felt that it was best to contact him directly since he was an adult, and I was aware of the difficulties in triangulating other people into relationships. So I was very purposeful in not wanting to contact him through his adoptive parents. With the support of an adoptee through AAC and several birth mothers, I wrote and mailed the letter. A week later, my phone rang at work, and I was a birth mother reunited. Like Hansel and Gretel, I had left a conscious trail through the years, joining alumni associations, always including my maiden name on publications, getting included in Who's Who in American Women and Who's Who in Nursing, American Nurses. I cared little about these activities, but I wanted the trail to be easily followed. I figured that they must have told him that I was a student in the area and that I was a nurse, so he would have, moved into either Columbia or Cornell or possibly NYU to look for me. My child, with the help of his mother, followed the trail to verify that I was his mother after reading the letter. He received the letter on a Monday. He did his own searching. He called the agency. The agency had given me no help at all. Someone in the agency attached a stickum to the non-identifying information saying yes. And once he received that, on Friday he told his mother he had to take an exam the next day, so he figured if he told his father they'd be up all night. So he took the exam, and then he told his father on Saturday. Sunday night he was out drinking with his buddies, and one of them said, "For God's sake, why don't you just call her?" And so he called me at work Monday afternoon, and we were reunited Monday night at my house. He lived only 5 miles away and works in the same zip code. So anyway, I was proud of him for doing that. Obviously, our reunion was one of the most intense emotional experiences of my life. We hugged, my daughter took pictures. Physically, I felt the bonding so strongly that I had to separate myself and sit in the rocker near him. We were alike in thought, intelligence, and gesture. We laughed. He was relieved that we were not preppy. I was surprised that he was a whiz at math like my daughters. I had always assumed that they had inherited that ability from their father. I saw my brother in him, and I think I was really seeing myself in him, but I identified that as my brother. We were both double-jointed, and when he did that, I just blew my mind. That silly little fact took on a larger-than-life importance to me. I found a son who was warm, caring, full of ambition, confident, and directed in his life, and it was clear that he had been parented in a warm, caring, involved, intelligent, confident way, I think. I felt that I was a very fortunate birth mother. My I think has come later. It was difficult for us to say goodnight that evening. We were exhausted and exhilarated. We both had to go to work the next day. The reunion high was quickly being eroded by the reality of daily life. And I wrote this poem in the days following our reunion, Lost and Found. I wait. I am a stranger to you, my stranger son. You are a stranger who once was not strange to me. You are the son I cannot see, whose life I do not know. I wait for you. I am the mother who gave you life and loves you still. When once we were together, we touched, and the touching was not strange. I wait. I fear your fear. Do you remember our together time when we were 2 and 1 and we passed the time alone? Do you remember the mother who lost and found you? I wait for the babe I lost, mirrored in the man who did not grow where I could see. My son, are you afraid to love the lost and found mother who waits and is a stranger yet to you? This poem really expressed a lot of the fears that I had afterward. The birth mother still remembers a baby and is faced by an adult whose history is blank to her. I did not even know what size shoes he wore, what clothes he wore. On his second birthday with me, I finally gave him a sweater. It was the first time I'd been able to give him an article of clothing. It was too long in the arms, but it fit pretty well otherwise. I don't know what he eats for breakfast. Those simple little daily things. The bonding between birth mother and child is deep and strong because the pregnant months are spent in isolation. Mother and child alone, hidden from the world. At the time of reunion, birth mothers and their children feel that bonding. Touching reawakens very real, physical, and often frightening emotions. At the same time, birth mothers fear rejection by their children. I certainly did. They fear the child's anger over feelings of having been abandoned. They fear the shame and guilt that can no longer be denied. They fear that they will not measure up to expectations. They fear retribution because of the sacred vow of confidentiality has been broken. And I was absolutely terrified that his father, who was a lawyer, would come after me in some way, and that my son had come to the reunion only to get information about where had I gotten the information, and therefore his father was then going to go after all those people. I mean, I had a whole paranoid thing built up around this, none of which was true. But to this day, I have not divulged where I got the information, and I don't want him to know because I don't want his father to know. Parenting is not a role that I expected to assume. I had parented 2 children, and the fact that I was not and would not be a parent to my son was very clear to me. He already had 2 very capable parents. As I said to him, what 25-year-old needs another mother? Yet I do see myself as his other mother. I wondered how our relationship with each other would play itself out. What roles would each of us assume with the other? Would I be the active pursuer and he the passive distancer? Would he and I be involved in the daily fabric of each other's lives? Roles for birth mothers in the lives of their adult children have not been created or woven into the fabric of society. And furthermore, I had raised daughters, not sons, and I didn't know what to expect from a son. So I then spent time with my daughter's boyfriends, who taught me how sons react. Now, who are the characters in this drama? I wish I had a board, and I wish I could draw a genogram. I'd be really happy, but there aren't any, so be it. I've put the characters, the blue characters are my family, and the yellow characters are his family, so you can kind of get a clue there. My husband has been very supportive of me. He's always known about my son. He remembers the time that I told him. I don't remember that time. He says we both cried. He always, I guess, assumed that I would find my son, but it was never anything that he actively did. He accepts John, and I think he enjoys him being around because it's another man. You know, he's surrounded by women. And I think John enjoys my husband being there because he's not so surrounded by women. Interestingly, my husband works in the same company as John's father. They have actually been in a meeting room together. Both saw the other, but neither one acknowledged that the other existed. My husband went bonkers when I suggested that perhaps I ought to change my will, because I would be very upset if my will didn't acknowledge my son. And my husband said, "How much money?" And I said, "I don't know. I could start a bank account and put money in it every year, and gradually, you know, it would accumulate, and maybe I'd be able to save $10,000. You know, we're not rich." And my husband, $10,000? Oh my God! You know, he's got his own family. They're going to leave him, you know, for him and all of this stuff. And so I realized that my husband had some pretty serious feelings about this whole thing. Yeah. Then we talked, we told my husband's brother, who started pontificating to me, and I became very angry and left the room and haven't mentioned my son again to him. And my husband's brother's family, who he has an illegitimate daughter who is married now and has 2 grandchildren, and she's always been our niece, and we've always loved her, but she lives far away. My daughter Lisa is 21 years old. She's John's half-sister. She's a college graduate, and she's trying to be on her own now. She's always been the oldest one in the family. To her, that's been very important. She helped me search. When we found his picture, and I sent her a Xerox of his picture, she pulled back. The moment when he became real, it became too much for her to deal with. And the day of reunion, she said she liked him. He looked nice. She doesn't write to him or call him. She's relieved. My 2 daughters were just home a couple weeks ago for about 5 days, and I didn't call John to have him come over for dinner because I was busy with a million things, and I said, well, I didn't call John, and they said, oh, thank goodness. And that really hurt. I mean, and I spoke to her about that later. But that's part of the time. I'm going to talk in a minute about how people need time, and I think she still needs time. She wants her family to stay the same. In other words, she wants our nuclear family to be our nuclear family. When we open our Christmas presents on Christmas morning, she wants it to be the four of us. Now, the reality is that it won't always be the four of us. Someday she'll have her husband there and her children, and my other daughter will have his husband and his children, but she's not ready to deal with that yet. And she's made it very clear that she sort of sees my son as a cousin who's very nice, interesting to get to know, but she doesn't want him to be part of our family. She told her boyfriends about my experience, and the boyfriends were both, her boyfriends, I just feel like they're sons. I mean, I just love her boyfriends, and I think that's my need. She hasn't ever had a present for him. At Christmas, he brought a present for her this year, but she didn't have a present for him. So she's got some things to deal with. Sarah, my 19-year-old, has always been the baby in the family. She's a sophomore in college. She's the one who's most like him. They have the same sense of humor. They look alike. I mean, they're just both funny as anything. She wanted a big brother, and she made several attempts to reach out to him. She went to his office and to have lunch with him. That day, she came home and would not talk to me. Absolutely would not tell me anything. And I was absolutely crushed. I mean, I was waiting, bated breath, to hear about John, you know. And there was nothing. She would not discuss it. Then she was having boyfriend trouble at college, and I said, gee, do you want me to call John? You can go talk to him, you know, about what boys are like and all this stuff. So he came and picked her up and took her to his condo. And he and his condo mates talked with her. And I think she had a relatively good time, but she still feels like he's a stranger to her. And she feels very uncomfortable with him. Although over time, I think she and John asks about her. He's always concerned about how Sarah's doing. And I think that she's very young and she's very shy, and that will come with time. John's grandmother, my mother. I called her after the reunion and I said, guess what, Mom? You have a grandson. And it took me a long time. I wanted to tell her in person, but she was coming for a visit, and I wanted to have her meet John, so I figured, well, I better tell her on the phone so she has some time to adjust before she meets this guy. And she said, I've always known, I knew all along, but I never told your father. He wouldn't have understood. I'm proud of you. And I was just furious. I mean, I can't begin to tell you the fury that I felt. How could a mother, I still don't understand how a mother could not reach out to help a daughter. I mean, I was 25 years old. I had graduated from college. I had a job. Why couldn't I have kept my son if she had helped me? I can't even comprehend that. But anyway, she visited us and with her husband, and John came over that night. He was very polite. She was very polite. And that was it. But I wanted him to meet her. I really, truly felt that he needed to have met his grandmother. And I think that was important. We went to his condo about a year later because he had just moved in, my husband and I told my mother on the phone, gee, we just went to John's condo and it's really nice. And she said to me, who's John? So she had gone into denial again, and was unable to acknowledge him. When she writes letters, she doesn't ask about John. She doesn't send Christmas presents. As far as she's concerned, in her denial, I believe, he doesn't exist. She doesn't acknowledge him as a grandson, and that bothers me terribly. My brother and sister-in-law and niece and nephew were reunited with John last August. That was a really exciting day. John looks most like my brother. When he was at my house the night of reunion, he found a picture of my brother, and he said, my brother's wedding, and he said, oh my goodness, he looks just like me, and he took the picture home with him. My brother felt that he had known John all of his life. There was an instant bonding between them. My nephew Mark had been having problems with alcoholism at the time of my reunion, and because of the experience that I was having with reunion and my feelings about my mother, I was able to tell my brother to go to my nephew's college and be with him. Just get in the car and go. He needs you. Please go. He needs you. And my brother did that. And so I feel that I was able to help him in some way. And my sister-in-law was loving, wonderful. My it was just a marvelous day, and they wrote me a letter afterwards. They asked about John. They wrote a letter saying it was just so incredible to be in the same room with someone they felt they had known all their lives. And it occurred to me that for John, that was probably an overwhelming day, because it may have been the first time in his life that he'd ever been in a room with so many people that he looked like and gestured like and was built like. I mean, just, it must have been very overwhelming for him. He seemed exhausted when he left. Whenever he comes to visit, he doesn't want to leave. It's very obvious. And then whenever he visits, I don't hear from him for a long time afterward. So they're attached to him. And my brother, I told my brother how I felt about the will, and I made him promise me that if anything ever happened to me, that he would see that my son knew that I wanted to provide for him and see that he was provided for in some way. So I feel confident that my brother will do that. I have an Aunt Marge, who is my father's sister, and she's very different from my mother. She's a very warm and generous and loving person who's always hugging you and doesn't care if the house is clean or dirty, and would have 60 million people sleeping on the floor if she needed to. And my kids have always loved my Aunt Marge, and we've always spent time with her and my Uncle Roy. My Aunt Marge asks about him. She includes his name when she sends me letters. Dear Bevan, Abe, Lisa, and Sarah, and John. That means so much to me. She would like to meet him. She would like him to come and visit her. And she's just been so warm and open and loving that that's been a very important thing for me, and ultimately will be for him. And that's my family, his family, that's my family. And then we come to John. John is named the same name essentially as his father, but he's not a junior. He graduated from Notre Dame. He tried to please me initially. He came one night. It was his birthday. I'd asked him to come. And it turned out they were having a really important party at his work that night. And he came anyway. And I was so upset because I could easily have had him come some other time. But he didn't want to upset me. He wanted to please me. So we talked about that. And I made him promise that he would always tell me, because it doesn't have to be a specific night. He works nearby. He's warm. He hugs me. He wants to stay when he comes. He doesn't call me. I call him. He sends warm cards. They're always warm, fuzzy cards that he sends, and they'll always come as a surprise. It just out of the blue will come this wonderful card, and they mean a lot to me. He brought us presents this Christmas. It's the first time he's ever given us presents. He gave my husband and I a present, which was very meaningful, and he brought presents for my two daughters. He forgot my birthday this year, but I understand sons do that. That's fairly typical. He wants his family to be very separate from mine. He talks about them when I ask. I ask about his sister and his brother, and I ask about them all the time. And he tells me about them, but he doesn't want me to know them. He won't show me a picture of them. He doesn't want me to see them. And at the moment, I'm respecting that, although one of my goals at this conference is to begin to deal with that. I've put his family as those people that he lives with currently in his condo, because I think he's moved out of his adoptive home, and these are his family right now for him. So his one condo mate is Matt, and I've never met Matt, but he sounds nice on the phone. His other condo mate is Slam, and Slam and John, I don't know his other name, plan to go to law school together in 2 years, and Slam we've met, and he seems real nice. And that's all I know about him. And then John, when he got his condo, adopted 2 puppies from the local pound. He went to Newark, New Jersey, which is not the greatest town in the world, and he got Yankee and Cubby. And then someone gave him a cat. So now he has 3 animals as his adopted family. His father, as I said, works with my husband. I don't know anything else about him particularly. I cannot remember his mother's name. That is incredible to me. Amnesia, I've just become I'm so aware of what amnesia does to people. His mother's name must be really a problem for me, because I cannot remember it. I have it written down at home, but when I started to write this, I don't know her name. And I know it, but I don't know it. I mean, I couldn't dredge it out unless maybe I took a hot shower and ran the water on my head or something. She sent me pictures of him as he was growing up on the night of the reunion. They were vague pictures, just like they said in that first meeting. And they really showed how much he and his adopted sister looked alike. Two little towheads. And you couldn't get a close-up. You know, most mothers have baby pictures of their kids real close, but she didn't send anything like that. Interesting. And the mother and father set up an agenda at the very beginning, and that was that they did not want their youngest son, who's adopted, to know that I had contacted John. So I was immediately in a bind. I wouldn't tell anyone his last name. I still don't. And I was terrified that the younger brother would find out and that I would be blamed, and that would be the end of the relationship.
What was their rationale?
The younger brother apparently, well, all right, we'll talk about the younger brother first. The younger brother is a fair number of years younger. He's not a towhead. He's not slight like John. In some ways, I think I've seen the parents. I'm not sure if it was them. If it was them, he looks a little bit like the adoptive father. He's not a scholar. Both parents are scholars. He's not a scholar. He likes cars, and he's just a different kind of a kid. And I think he had trouble growing up. He was having trouble in college at the time, and they wanted to protect him in some way. But I was told that he was not to know. His older sister is a lawyer. She has a lot of medical problems, and she was apparently told something very negative about her birth mother, and she does not want to know me or to meet me. So his family has been closed to me. He has a grandmother that he's very fond of. On his first birthday, I gave him the wedding ring that I had worn. I gave him rosary beads that I had used then, and I gave him a family history of my father's side of the family and pictures of the family and all that sort of thing. And he said when he looked at the rosary beads that he was going to take them to his grandmother, and he's very fond of his grandmother, and have her explain them to him. The story of the rosary beads is really funny because my husband's Jewish and I'm not, and my kids sort of grew up being who knows what, and my daughter didn't know what rosary beads were. And shortly after that, she visited Poland, and she saw it was a humongous rosary bead. I mean, it was part of a building or something. And she took a picture of that, and she brought it home to give that picture to John. And that was her gift to him, which is just horrendous. I thought that was spooky. And then John has an aunt who died the week that I contacted him, and that aunt was his godmother. And on the night of our reunion, he sort of implied that I was now going to be his godmother. But he's never repeated that. I like that feeling. But I must have come into their lives at a time when there was a great deal of loss and sadness. And I didn't know that at the time. All of these people now are affected. I think I've tried to let you know how they're affected. And they're going to have to deal with letting another family into their lives. It's like getting married. You know, you have to get to know your in-laws. You have to figure out how to deal with Christmas, how to deal with holidays, who goes where. Everything has to be negotiated. How do you deal with all of the little things that you deal with? I really think the perfect analogy in many ways is getting married and having in-laws. I'm deeply concerned about when he gets married, will I be invited? I suspect that I won't be. Will I be able to be a grandmother to his children in some way? And I don't know about that. And I would like now to open this up so that you can all share some of your experiences so that maybe we can learn together about how to do this. Right. Well, we're all charting new territory because no one has talked about this or written about it, and we need to help each other.
Your story really touched me, and I'm sure it touched many of the people here, and we started thinking about our own experiences and how they were different and how they were the same. You know, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. How were yours different and the same?
I had 3 older brothers and sisters, and they were totally shocked because we were all very close in age, and they didn't know anything about me. They were too young to remember me when it happened. And my mother, when I united with her, was at first very distant, but very relieved. And the rest of the family was very open arms, welcome to the family type thing, which I wasn't prepared for. You know, I was looking for information, and I knew that I had older siblings, and I really wanted to meet them. And I was almost more interested in meeting them at that time than I was meeting my mother and my grandmother and all my other relatives. You know. And my brothers and sisters had had a very hard time growing up, and had had a lot of problems, and there'd been a lot of financial difficulties and so forth. And when I met my mother, I was in medical school, and I lived just a few miles away from her. And it happened very fast in that when I started searching a day and a half later, I was at her house. So that was very hard for me, and people are already, and the search had gotten ahead of me, and people had found out before I had contacted them. And so people were calling me at the house, you know, that I had never met before, and it was like someone had plugged me into an electrical socket. You know, it just happened so fast, and it took a long time to get used to all these new people, like you said, you know, it's like new in-laws, and what's your relationship going to be, and I identified very much with you in that, you know, I really at the time wasn't looking for a lot of relationships. You know, maybe I was trying to protect myself, you know. But I really wanted to meet them. I wanted to see people that looked like me, that I knew were actually related. And yet all of these people were opening, except for my mother, had their arms open and said, welcome to the family. And it was just, wait a minute, you know. And it's interesting, even though my mother was distant at first, it was, first of all, I could tell after the first meeting it was a great relief to her, because it had been a very hard decision for her to give, as it's for any birth mother, to give up a child. Yet, as I got the real story from her, how I was adopted, she had gone about it in a very business-like manner, hoping and trying her very best to make sure that I had a good home to live in, and I had everything provided for that she could not provide for me. And even though it was a big shock for me to come and meet her, at the same time it was a tremendous relief, because she realized that, you know, that I really had something in life that she could never have given me. And that was a tremendous gift that I could give to her, and I remember feeling so good about that as I drove home that night. My brothers and sisters probably resented me a little bit, you know, and they didn't really admit this to me till much later. You know, even though they were excited to have another person in the family, they were very worried that because I came from another background or had a little different life, that I wouldn't accept their lifestyles, you know, and I must admit, even though we hit it off initially the best with my brothers and sisters and my grandmother, now I'm much closer to my mother, you know.
Interesting.
Were they
And
full brothers and sisters? Half brothers and sisters?
they were half. They were half brothers and sisters, yeah. And right after that, I graduated. About a year and a half later, I graduated from medical school and I got married. And so that was another whole set of issues, you know, as how they fit in. And my mother was very, very concerned about coming. She wanted to come to my graduation. I mean, there was no question she was coming to that. But we were having a party afterwards, and you know, she felt very uncomfortable with that and actually refused to come. And one thing I should, well, let me finish that. You jump around here. But I had to ask one of my aunts to call her and talk to her, because my mother had died. My adopted mother had died when I was very young. And so I asked one of my aunts to call her to invite her to come. And so that way I was able to bring her and some of her brothers and sisters to come, which I wanted them to share also, you know. And that was another real eerie experience for me, in that, you know, my adoptive mother died when I was 10 years old, and she was 46. And when I met my birth mother, she was 46.
Oh my.
And it was one of those adoptions where, you know, they tried to match coloring and, you know, facial, I mean, you know, general characteristics so that you would look like you belonged to the family. And so she had some of the same coloring, even though she didn't look like my mother. She, you know, she had the same color hair, the same color eyes, same, you know. And it was a really weird experience for me, just as deja vu or something. You just walk, all of a sudden, there's someone, you know, at the same age that represents a mother to you, in a different sense, but still was your mother, you know, bore you, went to the hospital, went through childbirth, and the same age that you left another mother so many years before, and that was a really unique experience. But I think that your son will probably invite you to the wedding. I don't know how he could.
I don't know. Well,
And I know that's going to be a scary time for you, particularly because you don't have a relationship, with his family.
Yeah.
It was scary for my mother, but I think having my aunt call and talk to her and invite her really helped her a lot.
That would help a lot,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. That was a very thoughtful thing you did. You had a comment, I think. Thank you.
I had one adopted sister. She died when I was very young. Yeah.
Talk about losses.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of losses. Yeah. My father, my adoptive father is alive, and he had encouraged me throughout this, even though we're not real close. And it actually helped me in the search a little bit. And he was at my graduation and wedding, and he was very charming and very nice to my mother. One thing that my aunt did that really helped my mother a lot is that she was my adoptive mother's best friend, and so they weren't just sister-in-laws. I mean, they were buddies from high school. They shared everything together, and so she was able to talk to my birth mother and tell her, how what a joy that I had brought into the family and how much it had meant to them, and what in essence to thank her, for the gift that she had given, So. Anyway, I guess in most instances, now my birth father is an entirely different story, and he isn't really willing to admit that he's my birth father. I've only met him once, and I haven't really gotten involved in his family at all. He has one other son, but that I'm apparently not related to. This I think.
Yeah, that's another important aspect which I didn't touch on, because I'm not sure I would even be able to figure out who was. I mean, I know who the birth father was, but I don't remember his name. I don't remember where he lived. I don't remember anything, and I would probably have to go under hypnosis or something. And I'm really debating, should I try and figure that all out for him, for John? I don't. He says, I explained to him, and he said, it's okay, I already have a great father. But that's bullshit. So.
I think that if he really wanted to know, then he would tell you, then you would pursue it.
Perhaps. It may be an issue down the road, It's just not the time right now.
I have
You had
a daughter that I searched for and found in October. And I've only met her twice. I'll see her again in a couple more weeks, but we've talked on the phone. The couple that adopted her had one son. Apparently the mother had several miscarriages, had one son. Was 2 years older than her, and then we're told that they'd never conceive again, so they put their name on the list to adopt and got her, so she's 2 years younger. Then, when she was a year old, the mother conceived and carried to term another son. So my daughter is in the middle of two boys, and which is really not too bad, being a girl in the middle of two boys. So anyhow, but she was raised, she tells me, that it was no big deal that she was adopted. She never thought about it. She never cared about it. She never thought about me. Nothing, it was just no big deal. She said that more than once. It was no big deal. I don't hate you. You did the best you could. All the adoptees I meet here, they wanted to know. I mean, they really had to know. They felt different when they were growing up. She has not acknowledged that she ever felt different. My mom never made a big deal of it. My dad never made a big deal of it. Besides, I look like my brothers. And her mother sent a book of pictures, and she looks like her brothers, right? You would never know she was adopted. The two boys look alike, and she's just the girl in the middle. And these adoptees, they all tell me they felt so different, and they had the need to know and all this. She denies it. There was no big deal.
John.
This is the end of side A. Please turn your taper over at this time.
She says it's a good thing.
What I'm going to do with it.
Mine's 21. She said, well, it's a good thing you found me now, because I might have looked later, but maybe when I was 30 and thinking of having kids or something. But I'm not getting married till I'm 30. I'm not doing anything foolish, she says. I've been on the pill since I was 17. But you know what? I wonder if her adoptive mother put her on the pill so she didn't do the same thing her bad birth mother did. I mean, because I got pregnant when I was 18. Now, you know, like, I do wonder, because she's been on the pill since she was 17. And I mean, she talks to me like I'm her long-lost girlfriend, and she's dating this guy, and she met this guy in the bar. And I'm her long-lost girlfriend. I mean, she tells me all these things.
Yeah, she has a question, yeah.
I was, same thing, pretty much what you said. I was never curious. I maybe had a passing idea, well, I wonder what she's doing now, or something like that, but it was never an issue in my house. I looked like one of my older brothers in some characteristics. Never really wondered about it, and then she found me. And of course, then the curiosity's coming, but it's funny, like the first year we were together, she was always asking, oh, I know you're angry, tell me, let it all out. I wasn't. I have never been angry. My mother, when I was very young, of course, told me I was adopted, and she always made it very clear, well, your birth mother did love you, and she wanted you to have a good home. That's why she let you go. And I've always understood that. And I don't know, it was just the way I was raised, but I understood the times, I understood what she had to have gone through. And I've never, ever resented her for what she's done, because I've had a good life.
Are you 21?
I'm 23.
Well, I think what you said is very good in that, it shows us there's a wide range of experience as far as how adoptees relate to this whole idea. And we tend to emphasize in the literature the guilt and the feelings, and so I think birth mothers are always worried about this, are you mad at me because I abandoned you,
Right.
And, certainly there are a lot of adoptees that have those feelings, even, subconsciously, but there are others like yourself, and I was another one, I never had anger toward my mother. This just never entered my mind, So there's a whole wide spectrum.
About 3 years ago.
You had a question over here?
I just have to piggyback on that same experience. I'm quite a bit older than she is, but I always had a really good feeling about being adopted. In fact, I felt really special. I thought this is neat. I did have the advantage of coming from a very large family, adoptive family, where there were biological children involved, as well as 4 other adopted children. There were 9 total. Some birth children and some adopted children. So, there was never any reason to feel that being adopted was, but as an adult adoptee now, searching for my birth mother, I am very concerned about interrupting her life and about, I want her to know that I'm a happy person, I had a good life, etc. I'm searching for her for probably the reasons that a lot of people do. I'd like to know if I have a genetic background. I'd also like to tell her some things, that she did the right thing for me, probably.
I think that'll be very meaningful to her also.
I hope, but you worry a lot. At 70 years old, what she probably is, she might, she could drop dead of a heart attack, and then I wouldn't feel really good about it.
She's probably not going to, and time is, she'll need time. Can we also try and focus on the extended family? We keep coming back. Yeah, you have a comment? Yeah.
So, I'm not adopted. We're going to adopt a baby, and it's encouraging to me as prospective parents to know that you can adopt a child who doesn't have to grow up angry, who can be well-adjusted, who can know who they are and where they came from, and provide them with a good home. And that, I at this conference, I do hear a lot of anger, and I know that people do have a lot of anger, but that it can be okay. And that's encouraging to me as a prospective parent, that you can provide the right environment and that people can grow up and feel okay about themselves.
And that even if there is pain, that pain is okay. And that's how we grow. Yes.
I think the bulk of any pain or anger that I have is more at the system than anything else. I have no anger towards my birth parents. I have no anger towards my adopted parents. And I have a wonderful experience too. But I haven't found my birth mother. But the more I search, the more I want to search, and the more I want to know, and the angrier I get at the system. And that's the only anger I've really encountered.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to say that my daughter sounds like she's very much like your daughter. I just found her last Christmas. And I have to admit, I was a little taken aback when she first called me, when I wrote to her and then she called me. And she said right away, I've never been curious about you. And she was just so blasé about it. And that, I was a little, but I do, she told me a lot of things about how she's always felt like she was different than most adopted kids. And I think she feels kind of special too in ways that you described. And what I feel is such incredible relief that she's had a great family. And this, and I don't totally buy this never curious stuff. She knows too much about me. Her mother found out stuff that supposedly you weren't supposed to be able to find out about then. It got a little topsy-turvy, but nonetheless, she knows more. She's 20, she just turned 24. And my feeling is that I want to be careful with her not to push her. I think she'll come to her own curiosity or recognition of it in time. And I'm just so happy to have found her, and to, I'm just trying to, boy, am I working on patience. And
It's so much better when you know they're alive and well and they did okay. I mean, you know, I don't have a brain surgeon, but we did okay, you know?
I think two things that I want to say. I think, and for yourself and for those that have found in their children, we're talking about different timetables. Your timetable and their timetable.
Yes.
You're beginning to question. One does the searching is on the first timetable.
Yes, that's right.
Now, for my daughter, we've been reunited for 2 years, and she's had a disruptive adolescent period. We all understand that? And now, she is now in touch, this is after 2 years, that she is finally in touch, that all that anger has been misdirected at her environment, including her adopted parents, whatever her environment was, that in fact, she's very, very angry at me, at my rejection of her, and that all that anger, in fact, was really to be directed at me, of whom she never related to or thought of. So now she's hitting, I feel, she's hitting her time schedule at this time, and we went through the waiver system. My release was already in there. She and her parents entered the waiver system, and the information was right there. I believe she did not have that period of hunger for a search, and it was just right there. And so, once again, I think we're on time schedules.
Yes.
And it's for the parents.
And they're not congruent.
That may reject them.
And you can't.
And our parents and our children and our sisters and brothers, they're all on different timetables.
On this, my question now, since we're sharing what happens when they do get into anger, which is where mine is entering?
It's okay.
What is to be expected?
I think anger is fine. I mean, but the interesting thing, though, the night after my reunion, I had started to keep a diary, and I was rereading it in my hotel room. The night after my reunion with my son, I got in a violent fight with my two daughters. It was midnight, and I was screaming my lungs out at the one daughter because she needed to get a job and was just loafing around, and the other daughter because she worked too many hours and needed to take some time. And I realized, and I rationalized it at the time as saying I had two different kinds of love for my children I parented versus John. I realized this morning in the session just prior to this one that I was angry at him. That I was angry about the whole thing, and that I was now taking it out on the people closest to me who were my children. And if he had been there, he might have gotten some of it, but he wasn't. Thank goodness.
Do you think your two daughters are angry at your
Yes.
son?
Yes, I think they're angry, and I think I need to go to my daughters and explain to them my anger, because they've been very frightened by my anger. And that's my next agenda with my daughters. They are beginning to express their anger toward me, and it's in the area of, tell me about it, Mom. Tell me about it. I want more information about it. And my daughter had just come home from college. Tell me about, I want to know about when you were abused. I want to know all the details, you know. And we're sitting at the kitchen table, and she just got home. And I'm thinking, my God, this is crazy. But it's almost like it's to put me down, to make me feel inadequate, to make me feel like a slut, to make me feel like all those things that society says I am.
Said you were.
Says I am. They still say it. And I hear it all the time. But I say that to myself, you know. I mean, the bottom line is I'm the one who's saying it to myself. I'm the one who's hearing what society says. I don't hear it differently. So my kids are expressing a lot of anger to me right now. And I need to deal with that because I have unfairly been angry at them for things that were my issues, not theirs. Yeah.
How do you deal with that? I told my son, who's now 16, when he was 13, that I had given my daughter up for adoption, and he had a half-sister. And he kind of looked at me, even at 13 years of age, and he says, I just wondered how come you were so angry at me. I just kind of took a double take.
Yeah.
Of course, he was going through that young adolescent stage.
Yeah.
Where, he was going through a lot of things himself, and I really did take a double take and did a lot of thinking about it, and more or less pulled back in because it was such a delicate situation for me even to tell him anyway in the first place, because I was, you just get all these fears, you're terrified that you're going to be rejected, and what this boy is going to think of you, and all these kinds of things go through your mind. And so to get that, and I thought, wow, this is a double whammy, how am I going to handle this? And it's developed from one stage to another, and there's different periods of time where the typical teenager thing where he'll come to me with things and he won't go to his father. And so the relationship has kind of gone back and forth. But there's still, how do you put it? My relationship with him is definitely affected by the difficulty and the length of time that it took for the search that I did for my daughter, and by the fact that after I found my daughter, we had a really good rapport going on the telephone. She lives far away from where I live, way across country, for about 6 months until she told her adoptive parents. And then when she told her adoptive parents, it was like I lost all contact, and I was like totally rejected. And it completely laid me out. For about a week, I couldn't function.
And you were going through all those emotions, and your son was watching you.
Yeah.
And you weren't able to talk to him about it, because I know I wasn't able to talk to my kids about it. And it's scary. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And I think of their perspective too. You're spending all this time on someone that
Yes.
was your first child that they've never met. They have no idea what that person is like,
Right.
and I'm sure they're feeling they're jealous. Yeah, they're
Yes.
jealous.
That-
They're jealous.
Yes.
They're wondering either consciously or subconsciously, do you really love me still? You know?
Sure. And you have to do a lot of reassuring.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of work with this. But since it's an ongoing issue and it's been in existence for a long time and it's going to continue to be in existence.
The only way I deal with it is just to be open. Now, my plan is that when I leave this conference, or perhaps on my way home, I'll write a long letter to each daughter and I'll say, you know, this is what I learned, and I realize now all the times when I was angry at you that it really wasn't you I was angry at, and I realize now how frightened you must have been by, in other words, and if I were with them, I would talk to them, but I'm not near them right now, and I won't be, so I'll write them a long letter. And I find that with my children, when I tell them how I really feel that I've made a mistake or something, you know, like I wish I hadn't gotten mad at my boss because, or I did something wrong at work or whatever, they really respond to that because I'm saying I'm not perfect and I don't expect them to be perfect. I used to be very frightened for them, and when they went out on dates, I was always wondering when they were going to get home. And when my younger one got home from college, she couldn't believe that I really was okay now and that it was okay, and I wasn't afraid she was going to get hit by a car, and she didn't have to worry and about me, you see, that it was okay. And it's still hard for her to realize that it's okay now and that she can go and do whatever it is she has to do and I won't be hysterical.
My experience is different because I had that, what do you call it, a different set of dynamics where there was a separation period after I found and I'm
Right.
still not reunited. And I never knew, during those periods of time what would ever happen with that. The typical, the epitome of the relationship in limbo type thing before you even were united. And I'm still not united. So the level of tension that surrounded all this has existed now for 3 years between the time that I found her and supposedly I'm going to be reunited here if nobody told me.
But 3 years is a short amount of time.
A year before that, a year and a half before that, doing a search. I mean, it's encompassed, for example, the whole period of time of my son's adolescence.
But it's still short.
Is he just watching? Is he angry with you a lot?
Pardon me?
Is he angry with you a lot?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
We need.
Yes.
I'm kind of coming from the other side of the coin. How do you protect your children from being rejected? Like I have a child that's basically she's really rejecting me. She's just not coming. I found her 4 years ago, and she's refused to have a reunion. And my two, who are 17 and 14, they want to meet her.
Yeah.
And, they're feeling hurt. I found my birth family has rejected us and they've rejected me and therefore have rejected them. I'm really worrying if they're going to be getting into all the same stuff that I am. By
On some level, they almost have to, yeah.
It
Yeah.
It hurts.
Well, that's
Sure.
one of the things I wanted to add to that was one of the sets of dynamics. He was real excited when I did the search and found her. I mean, he's going around putting the pictures that she sent me all up on the mirror in his room, and he talked to her on the phone a couple of times, and they've got a tremendous amount in common.
My daughter wrote a letter to her sister a couple of years ago. It was in early in December, and I felt so sorry for her. She decorated the envelope all up and little stickers and stuff, and she wrote a letter, and she didn't get an answer.
The other person may need time to move through that space.
I know.
That's what we were talking about, the
Really
different time
waiting,
time
And
span,
in my
timelines.
daughter's fine situation, it wasn't herself that did the rejecting. She was surprised that she had a half-brother. It took a while for her to deal with that. But the rejection part came on the part of the adoptive parents, which I'm still trying to deal with.
But you see, we were influenced by people, at least I was influenced by people who tried to tell me what to do when I surrendered my son. Your daughter similarly is being influenced. I've had to own up to the responsibility that it was my decision, which is very painful. And ultimately she's going to have, as she grows and matures, she's going to begin to, how old is she? Probably her early 20s? Yeah, see. They say kids don't really grow up till they're 30. It's a new thing these days. Yes.
As adopted parents who have a 9-year-old, and we went through a private adoption, we're trying to provide some appropriate means for a reunion with the birth mother for our child. And I'm curious from the adoptees here, how, picture yourself at 9, how would you let us know the means that we can provide for our daughter to contact her birth mother? She wants to write letters to her birth mother now. Should we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a birth mother, how would you?
Is it an open adoption?
Yeah, we know the birth. She knows. And how, as far as a birth mother, just let her write the letter?
Oh yeah, I'd be thrilled.
Adoptees, and I hear all the birth mothers.
You got a brother excuse.
Interesting.
Well, I think one thing is, I think one thing is that your daughter's asking, right? I think that's very important. I wouldn't push that on any child. In other words, I would treat it just like you talk about sex with a child. If the child is indicating an interest, then I would let that guide you as to how you guide this course from here on out. And if she's asking to write a letter, I think that's fine.
Would you contact the birth mother to let her know it's coming, or just let her write it?
No, just let her write it. Yeah.
Just let her write it.
Yeah, I would, sure. The birth mother knows it's open.
If you stuck something in yourself saying
Yes.
that your
I have a
daughter
question. We started by asking him if it was an open adoption, but I haven't heard that it's open. So I want clarification on what, let me make a statement first. Open adoption there is no definition for open, so let me explain. That's one of the problems in our system. Open adoption that we'd really like to have today is really just a casual phone call to everybody or a knock on the door, hi, how you doing? Versus open, do you know her name? Does she know your name? And you're living there and you've never communicated. And that's to me what I'm hearing you're describing as open adoption, that you know of one another.
the labor and delivery with this woman.
Mother and father of the child?
We're together.
And that's the last occurrence you've had together?
No, I write to her once a year, give her kind of a synopsis on Kristen.
How nice.
And what has she come back to you?
Lucky.
But we haven't allowed Kristen to do that because we've been told, you know, she's not emotionally ready for it. You have to wait till she's 17 or 18.
Oh, no. That's wrong. Yeah.
This need and she's expressing it, it's time.
Oh, yes.
And that mother writes back to you?
Yes.
Follow your heart. But Kristen's never seen the letters.
You have to give
Because
her
we
the
can't
opportunity to
save them.
figure out whether she's emotionally ready or not.
That's right.
Not let everybody else say when she is.
Does she know that you've been writing to her mother every year?
You
The
know,
only thing she doesn't know, and I'm having trouble with that,
Yeah.
because we've been really open and honest with her, except for this one
Don't you think
thing.
that needs to be open?
Yeah, you see, I believe that reality is easy to deal with, but fantasy is not.
If she says yes, show her.
Kids need to deal with reality.
I think that's, personally, I think that's important for you to share with her now before she contacts her mother. To let her know that her mother has written to you on a yearly basis and that you have exchanged
I've saved
information.
them all for her.
Oh, good.
Sure. She's married, she has 2 children now, so she's got a half brother and a half sister.
I would share that and then let her decide whether she wants to write it this time. Yeah, let her deal with the new information, because when I wrote a letter to my son, the adoptees all told me, don't put too much information in the letter, it'll blow him away. And I took stuff out.
I had a
Because-
5-page letter written.
Well,
She
we
didn't
have,
have half the stuff I
But
thought she
she's 9
wanted.
years
Oh.
old, this child's 9, so it's, you know, you have to.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, we have an adoptee here who wants to speak.
Oh, good.
What area do you live?
You have to think that,
California,
Whereabouts?
Huntington Beach, and her birth mother's in Texas.
if your daughter wants to write a letter and you're not letting her, no matter how loving you are towards her and you're telling her that she can't write the letter, she's going to resent that.
She does.
And when she gets to be 17 or 18 and she finally gets to meet her birth mother, that anger is built up over a period of time. If I was told all my life that I couldn't write a letter to my birth mother and you knew where she was at and she wanted contact with me, I would be angry.
I think this is a good example of how important post-adoption services are, because
Yes.
adoptive parents simply aren't being counseled.
Right.
correctly.
Or the
And that
people you
you're-
talk to.
And birth parents are not either.
Well, parenting resources, Sharon Kaplan, Dorothy, Deborah Silverstein, those people are really informed. They're here, and they're really, they could be very helpful to you.
We have a lady over here.
The book Children of Open Adoption.
And dear birth
It's
mother.
about letters that were written by children to their birth mothers and fathers. I'm sure there's some in there too. And it's very touching, and it also points to the idea of how the children tend to grow up with a much better self-esteem and much less sense of loss. And I'm an adoptee that's been reunited with my birth family, and I can point now, after having had contact with my relatives from a Polish family on my mother's side, and the sense of loss in the family and the one member that they didn't know where I was, and all the things that went on in the holidays, and just the feeling that they wish they knew where I was or could see me from time to time. This points up to what you're saying, not to be threatened by it, and to see it as an enriching experience for your daughter especially, and then probably for you too.
And also, in my heart, that's how I felt, but I'd listen to what other people have said is best for Kristen.
Go with your heart.
Go with your heart.
Yeah.
You have to go with your relationship with Kristen.
And as an adoptive parent, it would be a whole lot better to have a lot of those questions answered before you get into the teenager.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really
Same
important.
thing- Same thing happened to us in our family, and it almost exactly the same time for our daughter, who we adopted. At 9, she started to ask those same kind of questions. Do you know, can I write, can I be in touch? We had had the same experience. I had been writing to Bert's mom, and she didn't know. And when she finally wrote, and we told her, showed her the other letters, she was so relieved to know that there was a way to get in touch with her. And now that she's 11, it has been most important for her to be able to write to Bert's mother and ask those questions. One of the questions that came up for her in her peer group was they were all talking about when you start your periods. And they were all talking about, well, my mom started at this age, so I'm probably going to too. She couldn't answer that. So she wrote to Bert's mom and said, I need to know this.
Has she seen
And she got an answer.
How'd you
We're in
feel
two
about
different
it? Did you
states.
feel very
I
threatened
thought
by
it was
that?
wonderful. No, I thought it was wonderful. I was very happy for her.
Just make sure if the birth mother writes back, you'd have to see the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think 9-year-olds need to know that they have a little bit of control over their life too, you know, and not people are controlling them.
And developmentally,
They have rights.
right. 9 and 10-year-olds developmentally can now also understand what happened. Oh, I get it. But it's been wonderful. My daughter feels less different than her years because she can get answers to things she didn't know.
That's neat. That is neat.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you
Yeah,
withhold
yeah.
that, I think that your credibility as a parent, your daughter is not going to trust you.
Right.
She'll follow her heart. You have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
That's been my turmoil, that we've been so open and honest with her, except for this one little thing.
We were too, and what she did, when we showed her the letters that we had had in the past, she was mad about that, and we talked about why we had done that. And it was near Christmas time, and she was getting kind of moody, and after a couple of days, she wasn't coming out, but after a couple of days, I said, what is it? And I think she was 9 or 10 at that point, she said, you didn't tell me about the letters, and you didn't tell me about Santa Claus, I wonder what else you haven't told me.
Uh-huh.
I
Yes.
want to mention something.
Let this one.
Really appropriate to the group, but, I mean, not what we were talking about, but it's on their subject. They've been getting counseling. Somebody who's knowledgeable in the area probably has no knowledge of social workers on adoption, and yet
Right.
they act like they know it. So let us be aware of where we're getting our information. Let us kind of educate them to come to meetings like this to get more, because they really, in their heart, think they know it all.
And they don't.
Really, it's not
No.
being offered in the universities.
Yeah, no, it's not at all.
And what you're saying is true, because you're counseling.
Kristen's been in therapy for
Yeah.
five regular therapists for the last, 3 years.
I think we've all suffered a lot.
This lady wants to talk.
This is what you should do in your adoption. This is this is that. I know how you should feel. I know how your daughter should feel. Your daughter should this, that, the other should. And I think we've got to start Xing out some of that codependent stuff and start, being true to our own trails. And it is hard because we who have searched or have reunions or are in that process, we are in new territory, and our best experts are each other and what we've learned. And
That's true.
I want to get back to
Ourselves.
this thing of what's happening with the adults that are searched and found, because the whole working out of ongoing child adoptions, is a whole another workshop. And so I'm taking it back to my own issue, which is that my daughter and I are reunited, and I did go through a long period of waiting after I did what I consider opening a closed adoption, which is another subject that's coming up, how to open a closed adoption. But then I had to wait, and that was hard because I felt like I was missing out on the last 3 years of her semi-childhood, late adolescence, or whatever that I could have had. But I was willing to honor her adoptive family's feelings. I'm still closed out from them, but I'm not really closed out from her. But it's because they're still scared of me. There's a lot of loyalty issues for her, and she has met most of my family, most of her birth father's family, one by one and in bunches. And, she'll go through this period of silence in which I will begin to think, oh, it's not going to happen. She's going to push me away and close the door like I have seen other adoptees do. Like you get this great reunion and all of a sudden, bang, the door is shut. And you go, what did I do?
So I still had that fear of that, but then she would go and like talk on the phone for 3 hours. I'd go meet 5 more people. And in my family, the problem is some people care too much and some people care not enough. And I think it's easier for her to be with the ones who didn't care enough. And I'm kind of jealous over that because I feel like, well, I was the one that did all the work and now I'm still the bad guy.
Yeah.
But I'm still thankful. There's nothing worse than darkness, you know, of unknowing.
Right. That's the
Has anybody else
worst.
been in that where
Yeah,
you
this
were
young man.
I'm curious.
sort of half open?
I'm curious to know after people experience a reunion, and it's all this emotional upheaval going through. You mentioned that sometimes like the door closes and like soon thereafter. I want to know like why that may happen.
It's the adoptees that close the door.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm not
Speak up.
I want to hear from the adoptees why.
Why do they close the door?
I mean, why is
Stand
that?
up.
I close the door, I'm sure, on hers too, but it hasn't been a matter of fact that I don't want to have anything to do with it. I've got my own life going on, trying to take in all this new emotion, I have an extremely extended family now. I always wanted a big family, and boy, did I get it. And it's just, I mean, I'm trying to deal with all that. I'm supposed to go to a wedding in May and meet more extended family. And I'm going to school full time, I have a job, I have a husband. I mean, your lives just cannot stop for your adoption. And that whole issue, I mean, you've got to keep on living and you've got to go on. And sometimes you just get caught up in what's going on. You're not closing the door and you're not saying, hold off, I don't want to do any more of this, I don't want to talk to you for another month or so. It's just that you've got to play catch up this whole time and try to get your life on track and trying to learn how to incorporate your adopted family and your birth family and your husband's family and you know, it's just
That's right.
it's hard to
And we take it very personally. And I found that one of the healthiest things for me is to keep myself incredibly busy. I have 2 full-time jobs right now, and I think that helps me. It's sort of weird to do that, but I'm so busy I don't have time to think about it either. Yes. Oh, okay.
I just, you know, the question is just raised, I think it's a whole lot to do with power and control. I'm an adoptee and I found a birth mother 2 years ago. And who does the search? And who's being found? And one of my core issues as an adoptee is I was tossed around from place to place, never getting to say what I wanted about, you know, being in foster care for a year, who would I be adopted by, who is my birth mother, and there's such a sense of powerlessness. And so I felt a lot of power over doing my search. And I came out of the blue after 36 years and found my birth mother. And an interesting aside was, at the time, in my first conversation with her, one of the first things she said to me was, "Which one are you?" Which is an incredible thing when you live your whole life wondering the stories of your twins, siblings. And I said, "What do you mean, which one am I?" She said, "Well, you have a sister," and I gave her up a year after I gave you up. And to make a long story short, my birth mother was put in a mental institution for becoming pregnant for the second time by the same man, who was a married man. It was a sexual liaison with a married man. And so this is a full-blooded birth sister, and she spent 5 years in a mental hospital because the family rejected her. She wasn't crazy.
Early 60s?
Yeah. And it was an astounding story, sort of like one of these movies of the 40s, and it's like, this is your life. And anyway, the point of this, I could go on and on down different paths, but I found this full-blooded birth sister who didn't know I existed. It took me a year. It was a very difficult search. It was like a birth mother search because I had to turn a birth name and birth date into an adopted
They're very difficult searches.
name. And when I found my sister Kate, ostensibly she spoke with me for an hour, but she didn't want anything to do with me. And I have not spoken to her since in the years. No, she doesn't want to meet me. And so I am so comforted in some ways. She is so different from me, yet we're full-blooded siblings. From the moment I came out of utero, I must have been looking for my birth mother. I mean, it is a lifelong pursuit for me. And to find a full-blooded sibling who says she never wanted to know,
And when I began to sort of say, well, you know, this runs in the family and that ran in the family, she said, I don't want to hear what runs in the family. I've always cherished that I know nothing about what runs in the family. So I know I don't have to worry about getting cancer, blah, blah. But anyway, the whole point of this for me is one of the things I'm trying to figure out, and what the group has been so comforting, the variance of reactions that I've had to learn that this woman, Kate, is so different from me. It's an important lesson.
Thank you. I just, yeah, we can keep talking. I just got the message that we're supposed to stop, so go ahead.
Oh, I just have one thing to add about the search and being found and whatever. You know, and how you control it. You know, I had a mother and father, and I have a life, and I'm doing a search, but I'm not sure, I don't want another mother. I'm not sure what I'm going to find with this search.
You haven't yet, but you don't want another one that you got one. Somewhere.
Well, you know, I'm talking about my feelings here, and, you know, I do want to meet my birth mother, and I am curious, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the information or whatever. And when I was 20 years old, if somebody came knocking on my door and said, hi, I'm your mother, I don't know how I would have reacted to that. I don't know that I would have welcomed it at that time, given the circumstances around my adoption and the era in which it was done. I know things are different today, but you know, that's how I feel right now.
Because I'm more fearful that he, my father, that I'm searching for, will maybe want a relationship, and I don't need that.
Yeah, see, I was going to say you have to be prepared for a relationship. I'm not sure that it's humanly fair to seek out another human being only out of curiosity. Oh, I know. But
as soon as you introduce that word,
okay.
it's misleading.
Let me give you an example, though.
I'm not saying it's just curiosity.
Okay, I hear you.
You interact with another person, you have a relationship.
Right.
But I don't know that I'm going to want the kind of relationship that my birth mother's going to want to have. And I know that there's going to need to be accommodation and negotiation. I don't know that I would have been ready for that when I was 20 years old.
Right. Right, exactly. And I can't say what I want to say.
What he said, I hope everyone heard, because I've heard it over and over again from adoptees in exactly the way that Leonard said. I'm a professional and I do this kind of work. But what I'm suggesting is what he said over and over again is that seldom are adoptees looking for a new mommy and daddy. And most of you know that, but your expectations of what's going to happen afterwards so often is different than what the adoptee might have in terms of the level of the relationship.
But the reality is you're an adult who's interacting with another adult, whether it's mommy or daddy. I mean, as I said, parenting isn't really part of it. And that's another person. It's not like you're calling up a telephone number or a robot. You're calling a person, and you're going to meet a person. And there's a certain percentage odds that the person will like you enough to not want too close a relationship. And the other hand, percentage odds might be the other way around. And you have to be prepared to do that.
It should be the adoptee's choice for the relationship. It should be their choice. Because when the adoption occurred, the adoptee had no choice in the matter.
That's right.
Now the choice should be theirs and not
Have a choice.
But, excuse me, I'd like to say no choice. A lot of others. Well, let me speak about that.
This concludes this session.